Hello everyone, welcome to 345 Tech Talks. I'm Andrew and I'm here with Danny, my colleague, and we are here to talk about really it's the final podcast of 2020. So we're going to review the good, the bad and the ugly of what's happened this year. But first, most important things, tell me about your shirt, Danny.
So this is or what has been my Christmas Day shirt, and I thought following on with our
We're having a
strange
bit of a shirt
shirts,
thing going on.
we've
We've
got a
been
bit
having
of a
a shirt
shirt
thing.
thing going on. I thought the time of year, it's now the 11th of December, so I thought, well, I'll bring it out a bit early, especially for the podcast, and then it'll go away again for another 2 weeks until the big
Until the
day.
day.
So yeah,
Yeah, okay. So mine is mine might look a bit might look a bit dull. However, if we sort of get a bit of a close up, it is actually a patterned shirt, but it's like a blue on blue pattern, so it's a bit more
yeah,
subtle. So
nice.
it's another Montesini,
Another
but it's
Italian
actually
number.
it's another Italian number, and obviously we've got the Santa hats. So, but I haven't got a Christmas shirt, nor have I got a Christmas jumper. In fact, I've never had a Christmas jumper. It's just I could never bring myself to wear one. However, we've got our Santa hats on, so we're still
Can't
kind of getting in the mood for the end of the year.
exactly, the listeners can't and the viewers can't have it all. So
Well, if
Christmas
all,
hats it
all
is.
we can say is if you just listen to the audio version, you're missing out.
Yeah, yeah, you are missing out big time, especially with some of these shirts. So you mentioned at the top there that we're going to do a review, a nice review of 2020, and we all know it's been a very strange year, and you're probably going to hear that as we go into the next couple of weeks on radio and TV about how much of a strange year it has and how we're going to be thankful to get out of it. But actually, um, at 345 has been a very interesting year and a lot of changes and some really good things happening. So
But not only that, one of the things I'd say is that life is what you make it. So ultimately, good things can happen and bad things can happen, and you know, everyone needs to focus on the things that they can control, because and let go of the things they can't control. And it's up to you because things have happened this year that we couldn't help, but you can still have you can still have a good time. You can even when you couldn't see your friends, you can still phone them or whatever. And
yeah,
you've got to make life's what you make it.
yeah, as well said. Control the controllables, I think, is
Yeah,
a phrase I've seen in the past. And yeah, technology's played a big part in 2020 for a lot of new, we could say like new markets, should we say, where you've got a lot of people that maybe didn't use technology and are now really au fait with technology and starting to use it a lot more often. Even, you know, my nan now uses, like FaceTime.
yeah,
Never dreamt of that in the
yeah.
past.
My
Never
my
even
mum
thought about it.
my mum got WhatsApp,
There you go. Yeah. So,
and
um,
she's now at least talking about getting online banking. Hasn't actually done it yet, but talking about it.
well,
So,
yeah, one step at a time, eh?
but also, I mean, let's just roll it right back to the start of the year, because if we go back to the start of this year, the start of January, obviously, I mean, news started coming out about um, the dreaded virus in mid-January, but right at the start of the year, we didn't know anything about that. And the big things that were going on, I mean, there was a lot of because 345 is a consulting business, and we have permanent people that work for us, but we also use freelancers and contractors on a flexible arrangement to scale up for projects and scale down again. And the big thing right at the start of the year was IR35,
Mm,
which is so the government wanting to make sure that people who are working as contractors aren't effectively disguised employees, and therefore being taxed as taxing themselves as a business when actually they're an employee, and
mm,
and and so not really paying the same rate as tax as everyone else. And the problem with IR35 is that I mean, there were massive problems with the implementation that the government did, because really, I mean, first of all, some people that work, there are people that genuinely work as contractors that take a lot of risk, and it's legitimate for them to be taxed as a business. But also, the the whole kind of market for flexible workforce in many industries, including IT, has just formed that way.
mm,
And it's suddenly so right. We're just going to completely reconfigure this entire supply chain of of workforce, and that's that, and that was what was shaking itself out in January in terms of what was really affecting us as a business, because clients were getting nervous about projects, and then trying to, especially because we work with a lot of big clients, major, because the sort of stuff we do, because it's high value, there's big clients, high street names that you'll have heard of, that sort of thing, and they were having to sort of sort out their own contractors, because they might have had, some people we work with have got literally thousands of contractors, and they were having, the first part of the year, they were having to sort out their own contractors. And so they weren't doing new projects really. They weren't doing new business, and so that there was a big lull in our workload, just because everyone was having to sort themselves out. And then when coronavirus hit, it was like, oh well, that's delayed for a year, and suddenly it was like, what, we've taken all that pain for 3 months or 6 months or whatever it was to get ready for IR35, and then it just didn't.
And now it's
It didn't
disappeared.
happen, but the damage was already done.
Yeah, because like you say, clients had a bit of a thought process. Their thought process changed, and their priorities, like you say, changed. And it wasn't about, because I guess if you're, let's say, like you say, talk to some of our clients. If they're planning on something, the first thing they do is look at the contractor pool.
Yeah,
And if that was starting to become a little bit shaky, they revert back and go, well, we're not going to look at the contractor pool, then we're not going to look at what's actually going on in terms of our project itself. So yeah, it probably left a few people sort of thinking, oh, hang on a minute, what's going on here? That obviously got delayed due to the virus, and that's now moving to obviously
it's
April.
kind of March, April, because it was, I think the first lockdown was end of March. Was it about 23rd of March? End of March, something like that. So funnily enough, and this is totally, Danny joined us earlier in the year, and literally joined us on like the Monday, and then on the Tuesday, we weren't allowed to go to work anymore. It felt like that. It felt that quick.
It
But
was really, it is about that. My onboarding was very, very different to how to before, and it was a bit of a strange sort of place, really, wasn't it? Because like you say, we'd had this sort of fantastic day of like, right, here we go, we're getting started and we're up for it, and we started putting some plans in place, and then I think literally within 12 hours we were, Boris was on TV telling us that we couldn't go out anywhere, and we needed to
yeah,
stay in and find new ways of working, which thankfully
which we did.
which we did.
But that's also a really interesting. I mean, one thing is, because obviously you've kind of changed industry a bit, and
mm,
you, and so you needed to learn a hell of a lot. And one of the things that we had planned for you was that the fact that you'd be in the office with the rest of the team meant that, first of all, you just pick up on the stuff that's going, but also there's a lot less friction to asking a question, because you sort of say, well, what's this, and then the person next to you can just go, oh, it's that. And that's a really easy kind of low friction thing, and you don't really notice it. One of the things that you notice with, because we use Teams, because we're a Microsoft partner, and so as part of our Microsoft partner package, we get we get Office 365 and that sort of thing. But so we use Teams. But when you're on Teams, it's phoning someone on Teams to say, well, what about this? Feels a lot more disruptive. And it's the sort of thing that, because it effectively takes over your screen, and it's not the sort of thing that you just kind of, it's much more difficult to have a casual conversation with Teams. Whereas it's easy to have a direct conversation, but it's that kind of casual, kind of the ongoing background conversation that's much more difficult to have.
I think it makes a difference, and I think we've been hearing a lot from various different industries, and even clients of ours and partners of ours, that working from home is going to potentially be the new normal, but actually having that ability to just have someone at the end of the corridor or in the office next door to just sort of bounce an idea off, or just to take a piece of advice off, is actually quite crucial.
So there's a couple of things there, but one of them is, and I know, I'm sorry to just sort of jump in there, but it's just, I think it's, if you've got teams that are really, been together a while, got a high level of understanding, they know each other really well, high level of trust. You can do this quite easily. The leap to moving online for a while is quite easy. Building new highly knit teams is quite difficult doing that. And it takes a different skill set. Certainly it takes different, because people kind of naturally, if they're in the same room, they'll naturally just kind of get to understand each other a lot more. And I think if you move online, you almost have to, instead of it just sort of happening by osmosis, just because the fact you're there, there's a certain amount of active intent that has to go into that conversation. So it's a very, very different thing in how we approach that. So it's and some people, some people make that transition a lot easier. Some people, it's a lot harder. So again, but that's affected a lot of people. Like I say, a lot of people have had to change jobs this year for both for the obvious reasons, but also because it's the natural cycle of things. People move on. But actually, a lot of people have had to start new jobs with almost, be interviewed, be selected, start new jobs without ever actually seeing people face to face. And that's been a strange thing.
So that's quite interesting because we've obviously got, so our sort of, let's say our management team, so to speak, we meet most mornings, and then we obviously we have our sort of daily stand up, and I've not met two of our guys from a director level face to face yet this year, just purely because of the ways that we've had to work.
Well, I think you came in to meet them. I think when we were sort of lining you up for the role, I think you came in and met them, and that might have been January, early February, something like that. So you met them before, at that time, but not since you actually started. Not since you actually started work have you actually met them face to face.
That's right. Yeah. So not really, which is a strange thing, really.
And yeah, no, I haven't seen James since March, and I went for a curry with Paul in November, and that was the no, it can't have been November. It must have been October, because no one did anything in November.
No.
So it must have been end of October. Went for curry with Paul, and that was the first time I've seen Paul since March. So it's it's weird because we talk every day.
Yeah.
We still have other people. Other people come in the office, and we've still been doing kind of one day a week most of the year in the office since then. But and some of us have been in, but as a whole, it's that the whole team hasn't been together since March.
No, and it just going back to that sort of starting off, and that sort of like you said previously, like I have moved industry. So for me, it was a big learning curve and well out of my comfort zone to move into an industry that I had a very small knowledge about, and probably more I had probably more of a hobby around technology, of very much a
like
very
interested but not working in it kind of thing.
Exactly. So really love technology, like all, very much sort of into gadgets and seeing how new applications work and using them for pretty much the majority of what I do in my life. And going into a work environment is slightly different. So I had to learn a lot, and especially with what the 345 team do and you guys do is phenomenal amounts of learning, which is a little bit different when you're in an office environment to maybe what it is when you're at home, with a read this and hope for the best.
Yeah.
But it's been, but yeah, that's been slightly different, but it's certainly been like we said previously, we've had new ways of working that we actually feel have worked out really well.
And yeah, as well as could be expected. So that's kind of, I mean, IR35 for 3 months and then 9 months of virus has been kind of, that's been the big backdrop to the year. But there's amongst that, there's been good stuff that's happened.
Yeah, there has been some really good stuff.
And there's been I'm sure there's been bad stuff that's happened as well. I'm generally optimistic. I don't dwell on the bad stuff, but in terms of bad stuff for us, I mean, bad. I mean, I'm not going to go boo-hoo and weep, but we've had some projects that have been pretty tough. and again, partly because we've been running them remotely, and
Mm.
sometimes it's just really high. We've had some really high pressure projects that we've successfully delivered. They've been really interesting, but just really hard technology to do. So and that's been, there's been a lot. We've worked really hard. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it hasn't been made easier by the fact that we've all been remote. But there's also but one of the other things from a business point of view is that as businesses like us, we've got existing customers, and we'd like to gain new customers. And our strategy for this year, so we did a marketing strategy at the end of last year, and it was all to do with doing events and both kind of the trade shows and the networking events and that sort of thing, and gearing our whole kind of new business thing on meeting the right people at the right events and showing what we could do and that sort of thing. And then suddenly, like kablamo, it's all gone. So yeah, that was pretty tough. And and I know, Danny. I mean, obviously you helped me with a lot of that, and it's been hard for you. I mean, how have you found that?
It's certainly, it has been a lot tougher. So, if you look at how you would develop a business from the ground up. So, like you said, there's existing clients, and then you have your existing sort of, let's say, your black book. But it's always, everybody. It doesn't matter what you do. Everybody's always looking for a new customer and a new project and something new. And it's certainly been different this year. And there's definitely been some. We've had to definitely adapt to some different ways of working. So going more online, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, you know trying to pick up the phone where and when we can, although a lot of people are moving again into remote environments.
A
So
lot
that
of it's
makes,
yes. So a lot of the things about a lot of the things where at one time you'd have picked up the phone, often a lot of it's messaging people through LinkedIn, isn't it?
yeah,
And
so
that sort of thing.
LinkedIn
That's
is,
taken a lot of that because you've
yeah.
already got a connection with people you know, and you
Hmm.
can just ping a little message, and it's kind of because it's a business channel. It's different from I'll ping your mobile phone and that sort of stuff. So a lot of the kind of where you might have met for a coffee is those are kind of I'll ping them on LinkedIn and see if we can have a quick Teams call, isn't it? That sort of thing.
That's it. Yeah, and I think, I think the big thing with this year is, you know, when it comes to new businesses and working with new people, it's about building that relationship from the bottom and building that groundwork. Because I think when we get to into next year, and we all cross our fingers that we can start meeting up again and doing our events, and we would have already almost put that groundwork in. Talking to these people, understanding what it is they do, they understanding us, which is just as important. And then when we get to the point where we can start going to events and networking a little bit more, I think this actual foundation will probably put us in really good stead. So just building those relationships from the ground up. And I always say this: not being too salesy is probably a really big thing. Is not really
Yeah.
pushing a big sales agenda. And I
Because
don't.
again, and one of the things we're doing is, I mean, even with doing the podcast, it's kind of just trying to educate people and just trying to give people interesting stuff rather than, hey, buy this, because
Yeah,
people don't want to hear it.
and understanding us as people as well,
Yeah,
because I think if you could get to a point where you know I may not, people may not know us, but through the podcast they may have almost understood now how amazing, intelligent, and great we are just by listening to our podcast. I'm
and
holding out too much hope there, probably.
or even just the fact that I mean, because one of the things that I had a really nice meeting a while back, and this doesn't happen very often. Yeah, but first of all, I mean, our podcast's been watched by maybe thousands of people, but not like obviously not the whole world. But I was at a meeting, and it was we'd been introduced to this other business, and we had a mutual project we were talking about, and one of the guys from this other business said, "Oh yeah, I've seen your podcast," and and it was really good because he felt like he already knew us.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
felt like he already knew me, and Paul was on the meeting as well. And I think some of the earlier podcast episodes with
Mm,
Paul, and he felt
yeah.
like he knew us because we've done that, because some of your character comes across, and so it's you've always got that kind of ice breaking thing, and that was a really that was one of my that was almost one of my favorite moments from the whole year.
Yeah.
It's just spent all this time, you put it out on YouTube, and actually someone turns around and says, "Oh yeah, I saw that. It was really good."
Yeah, that's a good feeling, and it also makes this worthwhile.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask actually is it's sort of a two-pronged question. Is the types of technologies, and sort of just don't have to go totally into it, but the types of technologies that we've sort of really been involved in this year, and then moving on from that, the types of technologies that we really see ourselves moving into next year.
So I mean, as everyone's no doubt known, because everyone watching this will have gone to the 345 Technology website and looked at what we do, and our whole thing is all around data. So there's integration, which is connecting systems, getting data to flow between them, and there are technologies for that. There's stuff in the Azure stack, and we've done quite a lot of work there. We've been heavily involved in like a private preview process with Microsoft on a tool to get people off the old on-premises integration technology, BizTalk, and onto the cloud technology, so migrating people into the cloud. And that's been a really interesting journey that we've been on in that. But because we were kind of just doing that as a really interesting thing to be involved in, sometimes you pop up your head and realize that everyone else is still a little bit behind the curve on that.
Yeah.
So maybe that will accelerate a bit next year. That tooling to get people, there's a whole, if you wanted to migrate servers from on-prem to the cloud, just VMs, there's stuff to do that fairly automatically. But applications are harder to move, just particularly if the cloud technology doesn't support them out of the box. So I think generally the move to cloud is a big thing. So there's a few things, there's a few threads here that I'll pick out as well, because so that one of kind of modernizing your integration technology into the cloud, and then once that integration, as in connecting systems and moving data, once that's in the cloud, then you're able to take advantage of a lot of the cloud platforms and just massively scalable data and all the big number crunch and all that sort of stuff. So it's an important thing because it is an enabler to get people into the cloud and then do all these other great things. One of the other things that is a big theme at the moment, big trend, is that people are buying SaaS products, so software as a service, ideally. So a lot of companies had their on-premises applications. Maybe it was a package that was installed there, like the old Microsoft Dynamics, or that sort of thing, and so they had servers on their site with this software running on it, and if you're in that position where you've got your apps running on site, maybe they were custom, because it always used to be as well. There was a big trend 20 years ago, where you write your own applications because your business will be, your bespoke applications will give you competitive advantage for your business, and there is some truth in that. But what it also gave businesses is a massive kind of support overhead of supporting those applications, and oh no, I've got to have a team of developers that manage my applications. And so there's a whole thing now of a lot of people are buying more software as a service apps, or at least off the shelf apps that they can host in the cloud. And then the competitive advantage isn't from necessarily those apps themselves, but it's how you use them and how they integrate together. So you might have a sales CRM system that then sends orders directly to your warehouse system that then does this, and so that's a big trend of going in, just sort of saying, I'm not going to be building all these and running all these apps myself anymore. I'm going to buy these packages, but then I need to kind of get them linked together. And so for us, there's a couple of big things there going into next year. So one of them is that there's still a massive market for getting all these different apps to talk to each other, and to create your business processes that touch more than one application and that sort of thing. And that's the integration space. But the other thing with those is that when you buy all your different apps in the cloud. So let's say you've got a CRM. Let's say you've got a financials package like Oracle NetSuite or something like that. Let's say you've got SAP HANA or something, maybe for your warehouse. Because those are all being, so the great thing about that is that you're getting software that's kind of evergreen. It's being updated by the software vendor.
Yeah.
It's being hosted by the software vendor. You pay a rental usually per user, and everything else is just done. It's just the software is there. It's just done. You pay your money. So that's a really great side of it, upside of it. But the downside of it, there's a couple of downsides really, and one of them is, and it's all about your data. So first of all, your data is in someone else's system, and really you shouldn't rent it off someone else. So the fact that you have your data in someone else's system is a vulnerability. And so one of the things that we've been helping clients with is to make sure that they also have that data themselves in their own data warehouse or something like that, or either a data lake or a data warehouse, depending on what the requirement is. But just so that whatever happens with that other software vendor, you've got your own data, and you can always, and we have to keep synchronizing that and make sure that that's kept current and all that sort of thing. But you've got to own your own data. The other thing is that having all these, if you've got all these different software apps that your data's in, then things like putting it in a data lake, putting it in a data warehouse, getting all that, because otherwise you've got these data silos. You've got all these different bits of data in different places, and you need to pull it all together into one place where you can then do all your analytics over it. And that's been a lot harder for people. So when they've moved their apps into all these software as a service, you've then got you then have these data silos. So helping them get that data into one place, so that firstly just so that they've got their data, and second so it's theirs, and secondly for the analytics, and I see that as being a big trend for next year, certainly in what we're doing. And thirdly, I mean, AI. We've talked a lot about AI, and AI for a lot of companies is if you go back to sort of like the late 90s, maybe 2000, it's a bit like everyone was talking about websites, and but a lot of people, like in 1998 or 1997, everyone knew what a website was, but did you have one yourself? It's like, oh. And then suddenly it was like, yeah, but it's really easy. You just go to a web hosting thing, you throw up a few pages, and then you got a website. And AI is it's not quite the same as that, but AI is almost reaching the point now where it's been for the last few years. AI has been at the point where so many people have been talking about it, but when it comes to actually, right, you can do your AI, then they're a bit, and then suddenly it's like, actually the barrier to entry, people are just sort of saying, well, actually, you mean that I just I just get an extract of my data and run this script on it, and then that's kind of it. It's like, yeah, that's it. All the stuff's already there. You just run this, and you can do you can literally build an AI solution or a machine learning solution in like 10 lines of code. It's because all the hard stuff's been done. It's been done in these software modules by really, really clever people, and then you've just got to write 10 lines of code to pull it all together, and then boom, there's your thing. And it's like, well, is that it? And so that kind of that barrier to adoption is dropping really fast, and so there's going to be just more and more and more stories of ordinary businesses that have just cracked that thing, and then suddenly they're experiencing massive success because using AI, using machine learning, is just taking them to another level very, very quickly. Because it's and that stuff's available to everyone. That's the thing. It's just it's a remarkably democratizing thing that you don't have to be IBM that's plowing $1 billion a year into something to get there. You can just, it's like going to B&Q and buying some tools that anyone else can get hold of. It's available, And so there's going to be, the next few years are going to see just a phenomenal ramp up in AI, to the extent where people don't think of websites now and as HTML and I've got to do this. That's just stuff you use, and AI is going to be within a very short period of time just stuff you use.
Yeah.
And we already see that at the moment. I mean, I've got an iPhone, and you take a photo, and sometimes you go to the people thing in your photos, and it'll do facial recognition and they'll say, oh, there's happens to that. About a third of the people I know are called Andy, and half the people I know are called Paul. So it makes it a lot harder. Here's Paul, but there's Paul, and there's Paul, and there's Andy, and there's Andy. But when you go to the people on your phone, it does the facial recognition, knows who's in what photograph. That's AI.
Yeah.
But you don't think of it as being AI. You just think of it as, oh, my phone's recognised who's in it.
We've spoken about it in the past, haven't we? We spoke a lot about how AI is used by so many people every single day.
Yeah, it just works.
Just works. I think we spoke about we're quite excited about AI at 345, and we talk a lot around some of the possibilities and the proof of concept things that we put together, and we talk to some of our partners and clients around how AI can help their clients and etc. And I think it could be one of those things, like you said, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, it was like, you need a website. Why haven't you got a website? You need a website. And I think we're getting to that conversation now, where you need some AI. Why have you not? Why are you not using AI? And it's just like you say, it's almost done like a full circle. It's that next step to just to create. And it's so broad. It's so broad in terms of the what it can do, and it could be very small. It could be a very small change within your business, or it could be something that really does change it on a bigger scale. There's so much opportunity there, regardless of how big or small your business is. It's going to be a very interesting year next year, and we're certainly looking forward to doing some of the pieces of work that we've got lined up on AI. So
yeah, and some of the other things that are just going on, just generally, if we were to sort of say, well, what 345 good at? I kind of we've got a couple of core competencies. One of them is just stuff around data. We understand data, and big data, small data, simple data, complex data. But we understand data and making data do stuff, and we talk a lot about that. But the other thing that helps underpin that is we also have a massive sort of core competency in software engineering. Just how to build really good, reliable, robust systems. Because if you're going to handle tons and tons of data, there's a certain level of engineering that you need to support that. And we're really good at that kind of software engineering. And again, one of the things that we continue to be, to have people come to us for help with is just help with, just really good software engineering. One of our gold partner competencies is DevOps, which is a key plank of the software engineering. So and when people say what's DevOps, it's just like successfully taking a line of code from where it's written to where it's running. It's
simple as that, eh?
It's simple as that. I don't know why people harp on about it so much, but that that's not always a really simple thing, because you've got to build that software, you've got to test it, you've got to put it through also, you've got to do sort of various types of testing, static analysis, performance testing, functional testing. You've got to have release gates and approval gates maybe, and there's a whole ton of stuff that goes on now. But
I like to think DevOps is where the magic happens.
It's like you say, it's where a line of code magically becomes an app.
Yeah.
That people are using.
You mentioned there about data and how the data is what we're really good at. I heard a podcast recently, and they made quite a big statement, and that was that data is now currency for a lot of business.
And that's both good and bad. Yeah, because that's a massive subject. But data is, but whether it's currency and whether it's value is, the data is definitely value. that for a lot of businesses, their data is just, it's like their crown jewels now.
Mm.
It is the it's just your data is your accumulated knowledge, and your potential future understanding, and it's something that has immense value. And so again, it's a funny thing that, because one of the things we talk about is data lakes, because it used to be that you'd have a certain amount of data, and then we used to purge databases after a certain amount of time, because you sort of say, oh, because we're fixed on space, we can't let this database increase forever. So we're anything older than 2 years, we're just going to purge that off, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And we used to just we used to just be almost forced to get rid of data because you can only handle so much space. And now you've got cloud, and now you've got things like data lakes that allow you things. You'd react with horror now if you had to purge your data, because it's like, no, just stick it in that data lake.
Yeah.
I might have a line of business system, might have a business app that only needs the last 2 years, but I'd never delete it. I just move the old stuff into the data lake, and then I've always got it. And that whole thing of that, there's that whole mindset of like, accumulate your data, curate your data, and tend it and nurture it. But it's a valuable thing. It needs to be tended and nurtured. It can't be, you can't just, if you just stick your data somewhere without tending it and nurturing it and categorizing it, you have a data swamp, not a data lake. So there is a, you've got to actually be, you've actually got to be careful with it. But there is an immense value in data, and that kind of is driving a lot of our business, both on the data platform side of keeping that data in the right way, but also the data analytics of, okay, we've got all this massive amount of data. What questions, ask some questions of your data, and let's see if we can find the answers. And it's that kind of thing is just, that's just getting ever bigger, because
acting upon it.
Acting upon it, but the human curiosity of, what about that? There's no limit to that. So so that's one of the things we help people with.
Yeah, it's quite important. I mean, we all hear about the data, during the pandemic, and how important it is to, firstly, retrieve the data, analyze it, and then we all see it's being acted upon. And there's probably a lot of business out there that do retrieve it, analyze it, and then don't actually act upon what they're seeing. And I think that's probably where we like to try and make sure that we can try and help on that basis. And
because ultimately the whole point is that you can decide and act better. You can, the thing, it's like the whole thing of, we said right at the start, focus on the things you can control. But what you want to do is that we only have a certain capacity to act. So we want to actually maximize the impact of what we do. We want to make sure that as effective people, we want to make sure the actions that we take are maximally effective. And that's one of the things that whole data stuff helps us with. It just helps us make sure that we are being as effective as we possibly can be.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So all in all, a fantastic 2020. We are going to be continuing our podcast in 2021. So keep an eye out for our next episode in 2021, where we will bring you a fancy New Year shirt, I'm sure.
Sure we will. January sales. So
yeah.
no excuse not to have one.
No excuses at all. So I think, on that, I think that's a great spot to end. And just as a quick question out to anyone who listens to our podcast, if you want to get in touch with us via LinkedIn, and just, if there's a subject matter that you feel that you'd like to learn more about, or something that might be a little bit more interesting, that you think, actually, I'd really like to hear a bit more about how that works in a little bit more detail, then feel free to drop us a message and send us some information, and we'll try and get that acted out for you.
That's great. Yeah. So thanks for watching. I hope everyone listening, I hope you've all had a great year, despite what's been going on, because because we've made the best of it, and we hope you have so we hope you've kind of come through relatively unscathed, and we wish you a very, very happy and prosperous 2021. All right, thanks then.
Take care, guys.